Hey guys, we're here with Meow, the infamous Meow. He's full of innovation, tech, biotech, and so many other things. How are you today?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Pretty good. It's been a fun conference.
Oh yeah, we're at the Singularity Conference, by the way. Epic, epic. You'll see more of it in the other podcasts. And we've got here Moth Diagnostics, custom diagnostic devices for in-field testing. Results in 1 hour. This was the COVID half-an-hour test.
Yeah, so basically, we have designed and in the process of commercializing a 30-minute PCR test. So we use slightly different technology to what a lab uses, but we basically have lab accuracy results in kind of point of care rapid timeframes. So our test is somewhere between half an hour and an hour, depending on how much of the service you include.
Okay, and we talked about this before, so it uses RNA amplification. What was that?
Yeah, it turns RNA into DNA and it amplifies the product of that. Basically, the main difference between us and a lab-based test is our test is isothermal. So basically, our test happens at one temperature. It's kind of like your one-pot cooking in the kitchen. The traditional tests that are done by laboratories, they have a lot of pre-processing and then they have to cycle the temperature rapidly between hot and cold. And when you've got a big aluminium heatsink, that takes a long time, and that's kind of what means that you'll never get results in under about 3 hours. 3 hours, somewhere between an hour and a half and 3 hours is the quickest you can ever get a lab test done. Ours is about a tenth of the time. So.
Okay, and when do you plan to roll it out? Are you waiting for any a certification or that sort of thing?
Yeah, so basically, this is my first true medical device startup that's gotten this far. So basically, we're at the tail end of finishing off our quality management system. Once that's done, we basically apply through to the TGA, apply for this thing called the single authorization process, and basically we can launch internationally then, which is really cool. Fun thing about our test as well is that we can swap the DNA target out, so we can use the same technology to target any virus, bacteria that you might be looking for. So hopefully after the pandemic, we'll still have a business.
So you could use this, instead of targeting COVID, you could use it to target, well, anything.
Previously, it's been used, the same technology has been used in China to do tuberculosis testing because it's low tech, right? As in, all the technology is inside the liquid. You just need to heat the sample and then all the technology works because it's wet technology, it's biotech. It was being used, but not commercialized, to detect Zika. And one of the problems is this is a cool technology, but it hasn't ever really been the right time for it. At the start of the pandemic, I said, I think this is the time that this technology needs to be commercialized. And it's something that I kind of have done my entire life, is trying to pick the right time to commercialize the right technology. And we know that it is because other competitors are using similar or same technology, and that's like Heathrow Airport are using it. There's actually an at-home test in America that got emergency use authorization, and it's a 15 to 30 minute test that uses the same technology as us.
Yeah. That sounds really good. And I remember, because we talked before, so is there any issues with like false positives or expensive procedures that ramp up the price or anything like that?
Yes to false positives, no to expensive procedures. Okay. So basically we consider our test technically, by the law, it's not a screening test, but it basically functions like a screening test. So our test aims to catch every positive, but it's so sensitive that it will sometimes have false positives, and that's okay for our test. Like, as long as we catch all the positives, it's a perfect screening test. At the moment,
better false positives than false negatives.
100%, especially in Australia. One false negative slips through, and we just got lockdowns released. we just got allowed to go to the football again. We can go to nightclubs. Yeah. If you were responsible for ruining that, you wouldn't be able to show your face. Yeah. So basically it's a fast test, it's cheap, but it fits into an ecosystem. So, this pandemic has created all sorts of applications for certain technologies, and one of them is testing. And in the testing ecosystem, there's about 3 separate niches, and we fit right in the middle, which is highly accurate and fast tests. They're rapid. There are faster tests that are less sensitive, and there's slower tests that are more accurate, and we sit somewhere right in the middle. So we look at ours as a platform technology that's going to open up the world again, because even with vaccinations rolling out, until we've kind of beaten COVID, there's going to be a need for testing stretching out past 2024.
Indeed. And so what other stuff have you been involved with? Because I know that there's so much stuff there's just so much stuff we have to get through. But just give us a rundown of just some of the things.
Are you going to sign the NDA?
All right. See, that's when you know it's killer. It's killer. It's going to be epic. So what?
Where do I start? So
where do you start?
Biotech stuff. Okay. Whoa. Okay. So stuff I'm really interested in. What are we doing after this? After Moth? Stuff I'm really keen on. Well, Moth's going to go for a while, right? So we're going to look into like obviously the vaccine and different vaccines. We're going to look at automating some of the processes. So hopefully we can have pandemic readiness, which is going to be huge for the next like 20 to 50 years. People are going to be looking really heavily at this. Stuff that I've been super keen on lately, I've been looking at like self-sustaining ecosystems. I've been looking at long-term colonization of space, Mars, Moon, Venus. That stuff's been like, non-stop, can't help myself. Been looking a bit into augmentation. We saw some talks yesterday about some different types of augmentation that were happening. And one interesting one was there was a lot of talk about augmentation of vision, but there was not a lot of talk about biologically augmenting vision. Because basically like doing anything with electronics or computers makes sense. Doing stuff biologically, completely fucked. Like we will upload our brains long before we have life extension down properly, right?
I was going to ask you about life extension, but before we get to that, before we talk about cybernetics, so you're heavily into, what was that subject?
Astrobiome?
Yeah, Mars. If we're going to Mars, you have an idea on how to get oxygen onto Mars.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that so Mars has no atmosphere, right? It's basically solar wind blows its atmosphere away. That basically has no atmosphere. You're going to get a very, very deep suntan in about 30 seconds as the UV radiation blasts you, right? And that's because there's no magnetosphere to blow those charged particles away. But one cool thing that does is it actually creates all these crazy chemicals in the soil of Mars, and one of them is called perchlorate, and that's a worry if we go there. Now, perchlorate actually inhibits the thyroid and means you can't take up iodine, which means you have goiters. So people get this in the highlands of Papua New Guinea where they don't get iodized salt. You get iodized salt on your table to actually make sure that you get enough so you don't get these like hormonal issues. When we go to Mars, there's a chemical called perchlorate, ClO4, so 4 oxygens bound to a chlorine, and it actually competitively sits in the place that iodine goes in, so that you can't take this up, right? So you can eat all the iodine in the world, and as long as you've got perchlorates in there, it's going to stuff you up. So basically, but it's oxygen, right? Oxygen bound to chlorine. Well, that's cool. I need oxygen. It's like no trees on Mars. So what you can do is you can get some enzymes from bacteria that grow now in environments with perchlorates. They actually worked out that there's 2 enzymes that liberate the oxygen from the chlorine, which is really cool because it means that if we can go over there, all these chemicals in the soil, all this oxygen waiting to be liberated, we can just get some water, which is hard to find on Mars, but not impossible. And you dump some of this enzyme in there, and you can just keep on breathing the soil until you get collected by Elon Musk, charge you for your return flight, and put you on the Tesla meter.
So that's amazing. So that's good news for people wanting to go to Mars. Plenty of available oxygen with just a simple chemical process.
That's it.
To get those perchlorates changed to chlorine and oxygen.
That's right, and really exciting for Australia, a country that's known for doing mining really well. Canada kind of entered the space race by being good at robotics, right? We've got the Canada arm on the ISS. I think Australia's place is probably actually in mining in space. It's something we do really well as a country. We're this week excluded, reasonably politically stable country. We're kind of vertically incorporated. We build a lot of our own machinery. We have good processes in place. We have good occupational health and safety. We'd be great at mining overseas and overseas. We'd be great at mining on other planets in the asteroid belt, but also setting up industry and occupational health and safety around the way that we deal with the regolith, so the Martian soil, because basically, dust is a really bad pollutant, right? Cause you all sorts of health problems. It's something that they have to deal with a lot in mines, and it's also something we have to deal with on Mars, right? How do we keep the dust out? And it's very, very fine. So we said there's a little bit of atmosphere there. It's been breaking down the rock into nanoparticles. So this is something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and there's perchlorates in that too. How do we move in and out of our habitats over there? Well, you know what? I reckon we put Rio Tinto, BHP, take them over because I reckon that they know exactly how to do this and they've been doing it for a long time. We should use their expertise when we go and start colonizing other planets.
So leveraging existing tech and existing big companies in Australia to forward the Mars effort. That's a pretty good idea.
I think so.
Yeah.
So they've got to give me 10% if they're watching this, by the way.
Oh yeah, of course. It's GST.
That's it.
Thanks, Ludo. Thanks, Mal.
It's been my pleasure. I'm excited to be involved and looking forward to seeing all the rest of the segments.
Sweet.
Cheers, bro.